Can we be more effective? Not everyone has to do these classes. Alex and I are teaching right now in the middle school class, and our classes are very different. We're teaching the same subject, we're going through a workbook. Our classes are very different because one, we have different goals, two, our styles are very different, but feel confident knowing how you teach is okay, but just prepare that. So any thoughts about
Can you help because I only know how I teach, right?
Yeah.
And like I've seen how I'm talking like prepare, how I speak. Like what would you? Like when you say different styles, like is it just how we present the material, and how much we talk, and how many questions we ask?
He likes to use the Bible, I don't.
Well, that's a good one, Alex. Yeah. Get out.
Why use the Bible? No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think how you prepare is a big part of that. I think it's the types of questions that you ask, how much you talk. Some people lecture more than others, and that's okay. Lecture is not bad, lecture is not wrong, but for those of for people who lecture more, you have to understand what that means and how you still engage. And so, if you understand, okay, I'm more of a lecturer, I'm more of like, okay, I have these points, these are the points that I'm going to get to, how do I engage the student? Whereas someone else might be more able to engage, their style is more, okay, I'm going to engage the students, that's also good. But how do I keep things on track? A lecture is much easier to keep on track because these are my thoughts and harder to engage. Whereas someone who's asking questions and kind of seeing where things go, that's great, they're engaging, but has to be able to keep things on the right track. And so it can be how we prepare, what we're talking about, our style of delivery, content delivery, things like that are different for each individual person, and you have to know the strength and weaknesses of those different styles. And so a little bit of a self-reflection.
Yeah,
Each lesson,
our
drills,
I think our motivations are different
say
as
the
well.
books of the Old
Because
Testament,
for me,
or
I mean,
use your Bible and locate.
yes, there's content, yes, there's a lesson there,
Reviews from the
but
lesson
my goal
before.
is to get the kids to
Additional
open their
scriptures,
Bibles,
maps,
read,
songs,
understand what they're
there's
reading. Because
questions
there's so much where they will read through stuff, and if
for
like, okay,
all
now
the
explain
different
that to me.
levels. That's one of the things I
They're
love.
unclear.
Beginner,
That to me
primary,
is what's
and
worrisome.
intermediate.
So I like to have
So
the
depending on
kids
whatever
open up the
grade you
Bibles, we'll
have,
read through
There's some
and we'll
questions
explain
here that you
things
can use.
so that
So
I could
I
teach
really
them
like this
how
book,
they're
and
supposed to be
I
studying,
use it
how
a
to
lot.
use a concordance or those kinds of
They're in the class, they should be one in each classroom.
One thing of caution, I think, at least with kids.
There's at least
With adults, you can get away with a whole lot of different things as far as what your style is.
I think we're grading
But
this-
with kids,
this quarter, we're
it's really important that
So,
you
it's available.
have a style, develop a style, change your
Bible
style
study guide
that will be better
On their
to
website,
reach the
They
kids.
have tons
Because
of ideas
they will
of
turn
things
you
can
off
do for your
in a
class.
heartbeat.
I
Because they're
don't
just
use
off
it 'cause
somewhere
I can
else.
usually
They
get
don't
enough
care
out of
anymore.
this.
You've lost
Teachers
them.
got it.
You
But,
can get away with a
know,
lot of things as adults, you can't get away with that with kids. So I think that's one thing we have to always be careful of,
us,
is that we
use that quite a
may
bit.
have to change
And so
our
there's
style
ideas
to
on
meet
there that
the
you can get.
students
I like
that
this
we have.
material because I think
You know, you
it's
look at
easy
middle
to
school, you've got
follow.
5,
I think
6,
kids can,
maybe.
on a good day.
go
Yeah,
out.
right.
I don't know how
And they're
it's
all
working out,
a little different
sending
and
it
so forth,
home.
but
I'm-
it's important
that's
that
not
we
really feasible
reach
for
them,
kindergarten grade, but
versus hoping that
with the older
they will
kids,
come to
they're used
us.
to having homework and
Who's doing
they
the
get stuff
adapting?
home and bringing it back. So
Yeah.
Student engagement's the key. If you don't have people engaged, whether it's
you can go deeper
somebody that's
with those.
83 or somebody that's 13,
So,
they're not gonna learn anything
have
that
any
day.
questions
They'll
about
show
this
up,
material or
they'll check the box
concerns?
off.
Do you like
Maybe
it?
they've been
Do you
quiet
not
that
like
day.
it?
but they're not engaged and they're not gonna learn. And so, depending on your style, you better keep them engaged. And that goes to what Dan mentioned, your preparation. And also something you mentioned is very, very, very valuable. I'd like to think I told him this at one point, but I doubt it. And that is, write some questions out ahead of time. How are the different elements of your class that day, the objectives like I've talked to Alex about or mentioned earlier, how are you gonna reach those objectives? Well, it's gonna be through the material, which should be biblically based. And then what questions are you asking them to lead them towards those objectives? To meet that single objective or those 2 or 3 objectives that day. You mentioned how many, Derek. If you get too ambitious, you're just going to be running through material to try to meet objectives, and you don't know if you've done it or not without the discussion. And so, what questions are you asking? If you wait 15 minutes into a class to ask your first question, what generally happens?
So since I had the teacher one, we could
Silence. And I don't care how old they are. Silence. And we all get excited. We know what we want to talk about, but if you haven't engaged them, they're waiting for the next thing. And on a Sunday morning, if they're tired, then they prolong, right? And so you need to engage them early, and do that through review. We talked about last class. That may be good, but tell me about this. Somebody summarize what we did last class based on that text, and have them read the text.
I have 2 thoughts on that real quick. Like, it's just something in business that we do. It's sometimes you for like CEO can be say the chief reminding officer. We assume too much a lot of times that people have heard it once, it's done, they got it. Saying it over and over again, why don't we do that? Because we don't want to offend the audience. Well, I know I asked you that last week. Why would I ask you again? Of course you remember it. No. I remember it, they don't. And when you say it over and over again, it can feel like you're kind of putting down the audience. I know you don't remember this, that's why I'm going to have you remember it again. That's okay. Don't not remind, right? If there's especially if you're teaching like a whole semester or a theme or a topic that you want, they should get to the point where they're like, okay, I get it. Okay, perfect. Now you know it.
But do they?
Yeah.
How did Jesus teach? Let me try to tell you it this way. Let me try to explain the kingdom of heaven that way. Sorry.
Early when I was a new Christian, a new father, there was a class on the home that the teacher taught. And this is back on the overheads. Overheads. And every time he taught on the family. And every time I walked in on the overhead, he had this quote showing up on the screen. It was there every class, to your point. I don't remember really anything about the class, but I've never forgot what that saying was. And the saying was, no success can compensate for failure in the home. That was something I've believed in, I've shared with countless.
I think you put that in your class.
Yes,
once or
I did.
twice. Yeah.
Rob, I could have predicted what you were gonna say there because you said it so much to me over the years.
Yeah. And so it's like that foundational principle. I've also heard a really good professor, his name was Howard Hendricks. He said, if your students have not learned, you have not taught. Which is very convicting to me. Like, well, that's a huge responsibility. And it should be because, God tells us if we're called out to be teachers, we're under a more stricter judgment. And so the idea is that this idea of how important this is. Can I just go back to, Keith, what you said? And if my question is, if you've got different goals and a different style than he does for your class, you've got different goals or whatever, and I'm the student in the middle, I just want to make sure that we're careful not to overwhelm the student. Because you're asking me to do certain things, and you're sharing the same book and the same students, whatever, and you're just tag teaming. Connor and I did that last year, and he and I got together to talk about what are your thoughts about this class, and what are your thoughts, whatever. And I had certain things that I thought were really important in my style of teaching. And I'm not sure Connor always would have agreed, but he had ideas too. But I think it was helpful for us to talk about, let's be consistent, that's all. If I'm a student and I've got just this one book, whatever, let's be careful that we're not overwhelming the student. And maybe you guys have already talked through that, but if you've got different goals and you've got different goals, like what is that? If I'm a student, like okay, so
I don't think we have different goals.
We have the same goals, different styles.
Different
oh, I thought it
styles.
was
No,
different,
no,
different goals.
I
We
have,
have misspoke.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
no,
Okay.
same goal.
Same goal,
And the
okay.
same, the goal for our class, and this kind of gets to both teaching adults and the teenagers, as they get older, especially middle school and high school, one of the things that we want to emphasize is learning how to read the word, and how to analyze the word, and not just when we ask you to read a verse, read the verse and then move on, and we tell you what that verse means. I think this is something even in adult classes we can do. Read a verse and then discuss. But one thing that Brian brought up in our discussion was, don't just say, what do you think, without having some sort of place that you want it to go. And this is really important for middle schoolers because they'll go in really weird places, and you need to be prepared for that. But you also need to be able to bring it back to where you want it to go, not tell them where to go. Let them go in those weird places, but eventually we need to teach them how to read the word, not just okay, you need to obey these things because we say it, but why is morality important? Why should we even listen to the Bible? Things like that. And so that's kind of been our goal, because this is a very practical workbook of like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And we've kind of taken on and said, okay, let's go to the Word and open it more than just filling out the things in the workbook. So we have the same goal, but different styles.
Kind of done the same thing when we started class.
But yeah, I think that's right. Don't overwhelm. That's what you were saying. Don't overwhelm.
We just came up with just our list of things.
I appreciate what we're doing here, but I appreciate what you said, it all has a text. In my later years of preaching, I know when I was just a young fellow starting out, I wanted to quote the verse and comment or two and so forth. Context. It's kind of become my motto in the last several years. And to teach what the text says is so important. Context, to get what it says, and not to undervalue the words that the text uses to say it. They are inspired. Of course, God knew how to say it, and I think that's absolutely crucial. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I don't know if I make myself clear on some of that or not, but sometimes the text is so profound, and we just read over it, and as if it's just a bunch of words. Stop and examine. Is that word singular or is it plural? Does that have meaning, significance? Well, evidently. And the context can help us to see that this is not just a bunch of isolated stories or isolated verses. There's a theme to all of this, and it all fits together, and we need to see how that's done. I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, it goes to application, and God's telling us things through the Word so we can live a better life, be better children of His, and help each other get to heaven. That's never changed. So, if you're studying Galatians, or you're studying Ephesians, I mean, why is Paul writing these things? things, and have people really change that much? If they see the application at the 7th, 8th, 9th grade level, it's gonna make them better people. Because that's the goal of the word. If they just see it as a bunch of memory verses, or here's the objective I'm reaching today, or I've gotta do this so I can answer a question at the end, or whatever, it becomes rote learning. And you need to know what the word says, but how then should it change us? If they see it's really to be applied, and that means to change me, you need to show that yourself. We need to show that as teachers. Every time you read it, and I change you a little bit. And that's not, and I mentioned in class, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, the word's not changed. I've changed. And I've changed because it's changed me. And so if it becomes a living thing that way, it's living because it's changing me. And it's always done that. So if they get that early, then they'll stick with it, I hope, at the middle and high school level. And then they become more effective disciples. But that never changes. Yeah, I'm not quite the oldest one in here, so I think that y'all could say the same thing. I mean, we're different people now than we were 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. And it's not because of ourselves, it's because of how the word's changed us. So if they see that, and they get that people are people, and this was written to people so it would make them better, then it should help them that way.
I have some questions to the group and some thoughts, and I realize sitting in this circle, I'm probably nearly me in this one, maybe a little older than Connor, right? Still in the view of, and this is like the high school class, I'm old, right? I know that, you guys that are old, I'm sorry, no, I'm just kidding.
We're ancient.
Yeah, I'm not old, but in the eyes of these 17-year-olds, I'm old. And I think the struggle that we can face in those classes is to really connect with them. So the approach I've taken, and I teach a lot with Ben and Ben Walker, is like, I just openly talk about that. So I'm like, look, I know I'm old, and when I was your age, I thought 40 you were dead. Like, it's, and I go, but believe me when I say, I remember sitting in that seat right there, and I know it's hard, but let me show you. So I bring up instances where I did that, right? And I'm also teaching, our high school class is mainly made up of, I know, people that, I mean, I've lived here 17 years, I saw when they're babies and have come through. I am assuming a foundation of Bible knowledge in place. I'm not teaching basics and fundamentals, right? So I'm taking it, and I'm doing that because I think I know the audience. You know, I know they can turn to the right, the book, and they don't struggle with that anymore. It's then turning it into application. And so how I do that, and that whole concept that I talked about, is vulnerability to them. I want to, I don't want them to think like, well, that guy doesn't have it figured out, he's 40, but I also want them to understand, like, I don't have I am changing still. It's not like, well, you don't have to figure out, I do. Different stage of life, you're going to be changing along the way. And I think that's created a good connection to get them talking more, is when, like, I'm learning along with you, right? And that's maybe why I want a discussion, right? Of like, I don't want them thinking like, well, that guy, he's one of the deacons, they should know everything, right? He's a deacon, he's been, but where's that line, right? Of like, I want to be vulnerable to them, but I also do want to be like, hey, if I'm teaching this thing, I've studied it, I've lived it, you can trust what I'm saying.
So you're trying to tell them that you weren't born old.
Yeah. I remember in your seat sitting there, like, contemplating these things. I'm not that old, but yes, I know, I have gray hair now and all, but.
I thought that one of the most powerful answers that a teacher can give is, I don't know. Think about that. None of us want to say that. No, none of us want to admit it. But sometimes there's just some great question that just comes out of left field, and you're going, okay, do I pretend? Do I try to talk through it? Do I ignore it? But to honestly go, and that could happen in a high school class sometimes, like, Mr. Garrett, that's a great question. I don't know. I'll tell you what, and again, how do you respond? You would be honest. I don't know. It's a great question. I'll tell you what, give me a week, or if you're an adult, I always defer like, you know, I would love to answer that question, but I know Scott is just really itching to give the answer. Go ahead, Scott. Put it on something like that. I mean, how many times has that happened to us? Okay.
You better be willing to say, I don't know, or you may find that you really, really embarrassed yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And
You
you'll-
said something really wrong. I've done that.
I will say that I crave for that moment when they ask a question so that I can say, I don't know. So I could say, let's find out together. Derail the class, show them how you come up with the answer, how you pursue it. You know, just showing them the how sometimes is more important than the actual answer. So that when they have the next I don't know question, they know how to pursue it and find it. So, I don't know.
And many times it's a specific thing that someone wants an answer for. Is it wrong to buy a lot? Something like that. Well, what does God say in principle about being a good steward? About any number of things. Can we ascertain what God wants us to do? Is there judgment and discretion? Now that comes at a higher level, and that takes some knowledge, but that's where it's like, you know, do we have an exact statement there? Well, no, but we have good principles there to live by. It's the principles that don't change, and that's where we can take refuge in all that. But that's where you get into, and sometimes with kids, it's like they want to sit because they're interested. It's not that they want to stump the teacher that day, they're worried about it. So, anyway, yeah, to say you don't know is, I've always told young teachers, don't try to fake it.
No.
You don't know, it's okay, we're gonna move on today.
It's evident.
Yeah, and it takes some humility there, because you're not a hospital.
I had learned at a young age, and I still struggle with it, not to be, particularly in adult class, not to be intimidated. I mean, I'm sitting here looking around. There are so many people just around me right now that know so much more than I will ever know, that I can't be intimidated by the fact that I'm teaching a class and Mickey knows much more about it than I'll ever know. You know, I can't be intimidated by that. I have to move on, you know, and I still have to do what I need to do.
Let me tell you a story about Mickey, just real quick, okay? I've been in circumstances where you were kind of center stage, you know, you're expected to know this. And you feel, well, I wish Brother so-and-so was here, he's had experience with this. He's very much more schooled in this subject than I am. I wish he was here, but you see, he's not there. The opportunity is yours.
It's true.
And like it or not, you're probably more prepared than you think you are. And it's yours to answer. And you do the best you can. Don't ever be intimidated.
But if you go in intimidated, you're
You're gonna stumble.
There's two things to that. One, having outcomes, having goals, because your goals are going to be different than theirs, and you're teaching towards your goals. And two, being prepared. If Mickey has studied it for sure, and we have studied this topic, but you have studied it immediately and know where you're going, and so that's kind of the point of getting to your teaching style, your goals, who you are. Confidence in those things will make you a better teacher, because then you go in not worried about what other people know, because you have you have teaching. And I think that was in here in one of the things. You are not just a facilitator, you are an instructor. Even though people might know more generally, you know more about what you're trying to say.
You brought that up earlier, Keith, about, you know, you're bringing your own personality, your own life experience. I remember in our class, School of Christ last year, I had many of you teaching. I thoroughly enjoyed your perspective on that. Now, any one of us could have gotten up and taught a basic School of Christ, a characteristic or trait of Jesus. but you're gonna teach it differently than you and you, but it's still there. And again, the men, I remember, it was Scott and Tim, and I'm trying to think who else I asked there, that they all brought their own. They did the homework, they were prepared, but I just enjoyed the perspective of how they presented that class. And that's what you bring to the table. I also know men that are not here. You know why? Because they're afraid of being intimidated. They're afraid they don't know too much. I was one of them for a long time. I was asked for years to be an elder. No, I'm not ready. I don't know enough. At some point, you've got to get over that fear, because that's exactly what Satan is doing. And so we have several, and I'm just saying this now. Those men that are not here today, those men that need encouragement, that need to be challenged, let us think about that. Let's reach out to them, going, you can do this. I'll help you, whatever. Because we need, as men, we need to take more of a lead in our teaching.
Let's break it up, guys. I feel like that was a good note to end. Not that I was